First of all, let me see. Okay, first of all, I want to say thank you for inviting me here. It's really nice to be here. I hope that you enjoy this presentation, and not just this, but all of them, and that you can take advantage from all of these presenters. Okay, well, my name is Irres, and I am a researcher from Sport Polytechnic University, which is located in Guayaquil, Ecuador. Let me use this spotlight. Okay. Which is located in Guayaquil, Ecuador. And today I'm going to talk about COVID-19 and university students, specifically about negative emotions and unresponsible behavior. Okay, as you might have noticed, this is a common problem. You have maybe you have already seen many topics related to this, but this is still a matter of concern in many countries in Latin America because there is a lack of information. So we are going to present something regarding this problem. Okay, even if there are more problems, you know, staff satisfaction problems, economic problems, financial problems, we're going to focus on these ones. Of course, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this later. Wait, I want to give you a brief introduction. I am pretty sure you already know this thing, but I'm gonna try to do it as fast as possible. Okay, as you might know, in 2019, everything started in Wuhan, China. Then in March 2020, the World Health Organization decreed a global pandemic. Then in August, around 20 million cases and 800,000 deaths were reported worldwide. Specifically in my country, Ecuador, everything started getting really bad, getting worse in early April. That was when the public emergency started and when the deaths and cases started increasing. You see, for you to know here, this little point here is my country. As you can see here in the map, something like that is close to that. Okay. Also, many institutions were affected, as you might already know, including universities and colleges, of course. University students have been quite affected with pandemic-related problems, not just by psychological and behavioral issues, which are the two topics that I'm going to talk about here, but also from other problems. Okay, so infrastructural home problems, financial problems, as I said. So we were worried about this, and we wanted to perform a research. We took part from a bigger research where around 62 countries participated, and they wanted to find the impact of COVID-19 in university students in most of the countries. Okay, so this is something like part of that. Okay, we asked ourselves, in Ecuador, of course, is have the COVID-19 affected university students with negative emotions and unresponsible behavior? We established 3 objectives and 2 hypotheses. The first 2 objectives, which were turned into questions, are linked to the 2 hypotheses. With respect to this is the first one. We wanted to see if the students change the responsible behavior during the COVID-19. Okay, with responsible behavior, we mean preventive habits like hand washing recommendations, avoiding crowded places, something like that. The next thing, the next one is that we have to see if they cope with emotional issues, which are psychological problems, more related with psychological problems. And the hypothesis is most university students have often felt negative emotions. In the third, we want to see if there's any difference between groups of interest. In this case, we're going to choose gender and field of study. And I'm going to explain something about these groups later. But we wanted to see the difference regarding these 2 problems, okay? Negative emotions and irresponsible behavior, how different they are. Okay, how are the students how have students been affected in the world regarding this problem? Well, here on the right, you can see Latin America and Asia. The countries, in the countries of these continents, students are usually more likely to suffer from psychological problems. Okay, it's more common in the literature: stress, anxiety, depression, mental health, emotions, etc. Here we have, for example, two studies in Latin America, Brazil and Chile, where students were reported, the students felt high levels of psychological issues. Something similar happened in Bangladesh, which is an ASEAN country. But there's something interesting in Bangladesh, because this study showed that the students who are more likely to think that they are sick, that they have the COVID-19, are also more likely to suffer from psychological issues. Okay. Now in the left, you can see Europe and North America, and here's the contrary. In the most research, students are more likely to think that they have to suffer from more behavioral issues. Here we have, for example, a United States, where in a study, students didn't follow, a considerable proportion of students didn't follow the hand washing recommendations. And we have, of course, the United Kingdom, where the students had poor physical activity during the pandemic. Okay, this is something like how is the world regarding this problem? Okay, how did we do to assess this problem? We followed a series of steps. First, we used a questionnaire, of course. We used the European Students' Union survey, which was coordinated in 2020 by the COVID-19 Social Science Lab. Actually, this was the questionnaire that was used in the bigger research, which I didn't mention, but this was taken by the University of Slovenia, University of Ljubljana. Okay. And this questionnaire was composed by 38 questions, divided in seven sections that assess several aspects of university students. And the next thing that we had to do was to collect data from Ecuador. And I want to share something with you. This was actually the hardest part of this study, because we made some calls, we sent a lot of emails, and not all of the representatives from the universities answered the request. Well, at the end, we had to perform a snowball sampling so that we can get as many answers as possible. And we obtained around 1,507 answers from 20 universities, okay, in total. Between these, almost 70% of the sample was from one university, SPOL. The date this survey was launched in Ecuador was from May 5 until June 15, around 1 month, which was very close to when the public emergency started in Ecuador. Students were not forced to answer all the questionnaire. That's why there are some missing values. Okay. The next thing that we had to do was to choose two questions from this questionnaire to assess these two problems that we were interested in. The next, well, we are going to talk about these two questions later in the next slide, actually. So we chose two groups of interest, gender and field of study, as I said. In field of study, there were 4 options: arts and humanities, natural and life science, social science, and applied science. We didn't take into consideration arts and humanities in this case because it had considerably less answers than the others. The next, where we establish a score, like a punctuation, to assess this problem. Okay. In the case of negative emotions, the punctuation means the higher the punctuation is, the more negative emotions they have felt. And in the case of responsible behavior, the punctuation itself means a change in the punctuation before and after COVID-19, so that we can see how they improve in this kind of situation. The next thing, we run a parametricity test for the sample to see if they behave or not as parametric. And lastly, we applied a mean difference test, okay, based on if it's or not parametric. This was for the group, for the demographic group. Of course, if it's parametric, we apply the t-test and ANOVA, and one-way ANOVA, and if it is not, we applied Udeman-Wignet and Kruskal-Wallis test. Well, these are the two questions we chose from the questionnaire. Actually, both of them were based on a 5-Likert scale, where 1 means never and 5 means always. In this case, they were asked if they felt frustration, angriness, anxious, ashamed, hopeless, and bored. And in the case of responsible behavior, they were asked if they practice these behaviors, okay? Hand washing, avoiding crowded places, avoiding touching face, stock up essential materials, wearing a mask outside, and online grocery shopping. In this case, they were asked if they practice this before and after COVID-19 so that we can see this change. Well, these are the results that we obtained. At the top, you have negative emotions, and at the bottom, you have the responsible behavior. In the case of negative emotions here, this was actually regarding our third objective, where we wanted to see the difference between groups. In the case of gender, there was a statistical difference between male and female. And if you can see here, actually, female felt more negative emotions than men. And in the case of field of study in negative emotions, there wasn't a statistical difference, okay, between the groups. We didn't rejected the null hypothesis. In the case of responsible behavior variation, it's the contrary. Male and female, there wasn't a statistical difference in gender, as you can see here, and there was a statistical difference in field of study. Actually, you can see here, natural and life science increase the responsible behavior during the pandemic, but 0.10% less, almost, something like that. And regarding our hypothesis, we can see that students often felt negative emotions, and with almost a punctuation of 0.6, close to that. And students considerably increased their responsible behavior, having increased in the punctuation after or during the COVID-19 in 0.5686. Okay. Okay, so finally, I would like to tell you, to conclude, of course, this is the first formal study in Ecuador regarding this kind of problems, psychological issues and behavioral issues, emotions, etc. Important policies can be taken by policymakers. Even if this study do not find a solution for the problem, but it find what is the problem and how much is it. But some solutions can be applied. In fact, there are some studies. For example, in a study in Latin America, where 7 countries participated, it was found that the students who tend to be more like an entrepreneur also are less likely to suffer from psychological issues. And it's the same case with the people who enjoy what they are doing or what they are studying. They are like stronger. I don't know, that's maybe because they are too busy to being sad. I don't know, for example. Well, something interesting as well is that not using Ecuador, there's a lack of literature, but also in Latin America. For example, specifically in countries like Bolivia, Venezuela, Colombia, Peru, also in Central America as well. So there's still the need to do a little bit more. Finally, I want to cheer you up to continue doing further research regarding this problem. I know that at this point the pandemic is not a problem in many countries in the world, but in the future we might have new pandemics, new quarantines, new problems. We never know, so it's better to be prepared. So continue doing something like this, and even the technology is going forward. Maybe in the future it's going to be easier to, I don't know, maybe avoid limitations on most of the research that have been taken in the world. Like, for example, the limitation of this study was, for example, that almost all the sample, 70% was from one university. It's not representative at all from for the population of Ecuador. The date that the data was collected, which was way too close to when the public emergency started, and of course the missing values. But it's still useful for knowing a little bit of how is the situation in Ecuador. Okay. Thank you very much for your.
Yeah. Are there any questions here in the audience? I may have one question for you.
Okay.
How do you see the future terms after the pandemic? Do you think students will be more motivated, or the effects of the pandemic will be long lasting even after it has ended?
How I see the future of the students? I think that, well, actually, I think that the students are more likely to remain motivated. Maybe because they are more used to it. Because of the pandemic, they were forced to adapt themselves to do that. So the pandemic gave a clear lesson to everyone, not just for university students, for everyone. So I think that we all are going to be stronger regarding these kind of problems, and even university students, of course. Yes. That's why we need to continue doing more research so that we can help everyone, not just university students, but everyone to perform better.
Thank you very much.